everyone, I'm back with another video. This is Cherry. She is my baby, the youngest snake that I have right now. She's a normal ball python, although she's like fairly light colored right now. I expect as she gets older, she'll darken up a little bit. And she is maybe a year old, maybe a little more. She's just my little baby. I'm gonna be talking about our beloved ball pythons and whether or not they are a good beginner pet. You really often see these guys in pet shops. For a lot of people, they are their first snake or even their first pet reptile, but not everyone thinks that they should be. Now, these guys are actually incredibly hardy. It's definitely possible to make mistakes in their care that are not great. But they're not going to suddenly die because of these mistakes. You can easily correct any mistake you make in their care with lots of time to spare. So if you were to compare this guy to a corn snake or some kind of king snake or really any other colubrid that only requires very dry conditions, these guys are a little bit tougher than that. However, it's really nothing that should be out of anybody's league. No pet is a good first pet for a neglectful owner. There's, in my opinion, no reason that a beginner should not be able to fulfill these requirements. The main difference between a ball python and another kind of colubrid, many other kind of colubrid snakes, such as corn snakes, is that these guys actually do need a bit of humidity. It's not going to kill them if they're in too dry of an environment for a relatively short amount of time. You can correct it if you do make a mistake on this. You will notice right away that their skin will not shed off properly in one long, perfect piece if they're kept too dry. Now, there's tons and tons of advice out there about how you should increase humidity, from misting to damp paper towels on top of the cage, humid hide. So basically, like, it's pretty tough when you have a fairly dry house to increase the humidity of the atmosphere inside of a tank, especially if it's glass. The good news is snakes, especially ball pythons, spend basically all of their time on the ground. So you don't really need to worry about what the humidity in the air of your tank is. In fact, you don't even need to buy like a hygrometer or anything to even measure the humidity. You don't need to get an exact percentage on this. All you need is to buy a substrate that will absorb moisture and then keep it damp. That's it. It's going to be just a cocoa fiber substrate. Because these guys do not need tons and tons of humidity, and because you definitely don't want mold growing in your tank, you should probably let the cocoa fiber dry out before you get it wet again. I can't give you an exact timeline of how often you should wet this substrate or not, because it's going to depend how quickly it evaporates, which depends a lot on if you're keeping them in a bin, if you're keeping them in a glass tank, if you have a light bulb from above, or if you have a heat mat from below, which is going to slow down the rate of evaporation. In conclusion, you want to pour water into the substrate whenever you notice that it's dry. Don't get it so wet that, for example, if you squeeze it, it's going to drip water out, because then your snake will just be sitting in a puddle of water, and that can actually cause some of their scales to start to rot off and like trench foot kind of thing. It's like snake version of trench foot. This is not that hard to maintain. I personally, about once a week. Sometimes I only do it every 2 or even 3 weeks. Hello. Can it focus on her face? Maybe not. If you're really feeling like you're having to pour water into your substrate all the time to keep it damp, you can try putting a towel or saran wrap over a portion of the cage, and that should slow down some of the evaporation. One other reason that people often say ball pythons aren't really good pets for a first-time snake owner is because of their tendency to refuse food at certain times of the year or at certain times during their life, or if they're stressed out. Honestly, Again, this is just something that if you are a responsible pet owner, you do your research beforehand, which if you're watching this video, you have, then you should be aware that this is a possibility, and honestly, just don't worry about it. She's so cute. If you're really concerned, buy a kitchen scale, weigh your snake. If they're not losing weight, it doesn't matter. It can be a sign that your ball python is stressed out. So check all of your tank conditions. Make sure it's not too hot, not too cold, not too dry, not too wet. And if everything looks good, they're just not feeling like eating. Honestly, we feed our snakes so much more than they would ever eat in the wild, that it's not honestly unusual for a snake to then go a little while without eating. You'll probably get used to your snake's habits as well. A lot of ball pythons will go off food for certain parts of the year, and it'll just become a part of their regular yearly life. And you'll get used to it, and you'll know to expect it. As you can see throughout this video, they are really good. This is the main reason that people will recommend ball pythons as a first pet snake. These guys handle so well. They are so calm. There are always individual exceptions, but they're so chill. Their face is so cute. This is what makes them so popular, and honestly, I think this in and of itself is a great reason for this to be a first pet snake for so many people. You can hang out with them. You don't really have to worry about them escaping. They're not going to be wiggly. They're not going to be so tiny you can easily hurt them even when they're babies. And then when they get bigger, they're not going to get so big that it's a ridiculous size of snake to have or it needs a really big enclosure. So absolutely, I would say the best personality of a snake for a first-time snake owner. That is mine and Cherry's opinion on whether a ball python is a good first pet snake. Yes, as long as you are committed to providing the proper care and not just leaving your snake in its cage and never looking at it. You have to keep an eye on humidity, and you might have to negotiate a little with your snake about whether or not it's going to eat. Not a big deal if you're a committed pet owner.